You know, I miss that childhood feeling of going to the theater and it was like a magical experience. I think a big part of it is like obviously I'm older now and the theater doesn't feel as big or foreign to me anymore. But that being said, I'm always happy when a movie can sort of recreate that feeling. Like with Dune 2 or Challengers, when I watched them in theaters just on the fucking massive IMAX screen, they made me feel like a kid again, watching something epic and fresh with my popcorn and blue icy. Anyways, all of that to say, I watched the new A24 movie Death of a Unicorn in theaters the other day and it sucked. It stars Jenna Ortega and Paul Rudd as her father, with the two visiting some rich family in their secluded home like way out in the forests of Canada because Paul Rudd's character is hoping to become this rich family's attorney. On the drive up, they hit a unicorn, like a literal unicorn, and from there a bunch of shit ensues, not much of it good. They bring the unicorn's dead body up to the crib in the trunk and they try to act like everything is alright to the rich family, who is composed of a father played by Richard E. Grant, a mother played by Taya Leone, and their son who's played by Will Poulter. They figure out that like the unicorn has magical healing powers or whatever and it alleviates the father's cancer. But the success is short-lived because a couple more unicorns, who I guess are like the dead unicorn's parents, pull up and they just start killing everyone. Now I just wanted to give you guys the general gist of the story before I started talking about it, just so that the skeletal frame of the film is somewhat clear to you and you're not lost when I'm talking about some like magical bullshit. There won't be any rigid structure to this video and I think I'll just kind of ramble about this movie that really disappointed me. That's the thing, man. I wouldn't even be that mad if it was just a bad movie like that I can deal with, but I actually had fairly high expectations going into this. I mean, A24 is solid in my book. I'm trying to just think of a couple off the top of my head, like Hereditary, Ex Machina. I mean, they've definitely had some bangers, but I'd say they produce overwhelmingly interesting and like good movies. And I don't know what it was about this one specifically, but it just completely missed the mark for me. First and foremost, they somehow made Paul Rudd utterly unlikable. I'd consider myself a Paul Rudd fan. I think he tends to be pretty funny and charismatic in most of the movies he's in. And this is just kind of random, but he's fantastic in Forgetting Sarah Marshall. I think that's one of my favorite roles of his. But yeah, like he's literally unbearable in this movie. His whole character is centered around the idea that he's this klutz who kind of has no idea what he's doing besides trying to suck up to the rich family. And it just comes off as a lifeless gag that far overstays its welcome. What should have been like maybe a 5 or 10 minute bit lasts for well over an hour of the movie's runtime. Yet another qualm I had, and this was something I mentioned in my Mickey 17 video, is just how literal the movie's critiques of class conflicts and the 1% are. Now I'm all here for capitalist critiques and making fun of the ultra wealthy or whatever, but like with Mickey 17's critiques of labor and capitalism, it's just too on the nose for my liking in this movie. I like this line from Michael J. Casey's review of the film for Boulder Weekly: "The billionaire on death's door needs unicorn blood to live, that old chestnut, and he'll do anything to live another day. And not for reasons, but because that's how wealthy people behave, right? He's not a character, he's a type." Richard E. Grant's character is literally a catch-all for all obnoxious billionaires. He's rich, he wants more money, and he's evil because he's doing it all at the cost of a fucking unicorn. I don't know, maybe it wasn't even the shallowness of the satire that left that bad taste in my mouth, but it might just be how predictable this entire ordeal of a movie is. Okay, like at the start when they first hit the unicorn, there's this scene where Jenna Ortega puts her hand on its horn, and she has this sort of phantasmic out-of-body hallucination where she's like barreling through space and time, and I was genuinely intrigued as to what direction they might take things after that. But before long, I realized what this all was. A rich family, isolated from society, living spoiled lives, wants to exploit a literal unicorn to make money via the cure for cancer? Well, God, let me guess. Does the entire rich family die in the end at the hands of vengeful unicorns, and then does Paul Rudd make one final sacrificial act of retribution in which he realizes family is more important or whatever, so he chooses his daughter and his dead wife's wishes over securing a financial future through a rich family with questionable morals? Wow, that's exactly what happened at the end of the movie? Shocking. There's also a scene in the latter half of the film where one of the bloodthirsty unicorns is chasing Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega throughout the rich crib, and eventually they hole up in this bedroom upstairs with the unicorn sort of like banging on the door from the other side. They tried to make it into this dramatic scene where Paul Rudd like stays behind to defend his daughter after she hops out the window, and I remember turning to my cousin and literally laughing. So easily could this problem have been avoided had they both just ran to the window. And it's like, it doesn't work on multiple levels. Like it doesn't hit emotionally at all. Like it doesn't feel genuine that he would even do that. And it's just dumb. Like they can both live and then it'll be happier for both of them. Like the unicorn wasn't even in the room yet. I feel like movies have some sick affliction with throwing in a familial sacrifice scene It's just mandatory in our day and age, I suppose. But oh boy, does it get better. Now, quite possibly the only thing that I couldn't have predicted, because I didn't think they had the gall to go there, honestly, was Paul Rudd being resurrected by the magical healing powers of the unicorns as the final sort of emotional beat of the film. I touched on it a bit earlier, but just for some context, by the end of the movie, it's fully lifted off base from reality as the dead unicorn's parents come to wreak havoc upon their child's murderers. Now, this is kind of a separate point, but I will say that Will Poulter is one of the only redeemable parts of this whole project. Him playing this spoiled, unfiltered rich kid is hilarious, and he's got a good amount of zingers that make any scene with him in it instantly more enjoyable than others. Well, by the end, basically everyone is dead, barring Will Poulter, Paul Rudd, and Jenna Ortega, everyone else having been murked by the unicorns. Not too long before this, though, Will Poulter's character had begun snorting the powder created from the dead unicorn's horn, and it was giving him this like hyper intelligence that helped him realize he could use Jenna Ortega's sort of calming ability on the unicorns to neutralize them. So he gets her to calm them down, and then he like ties them up with a rope so they can't move. But like as he's doing this, bow and arrow in hand, by the way, Paul Rudd somehow stabs him. I think he had a knife, or maybe with the unicorn horn, I can't really remember. But at the same time, he gets stabbed in return by one of Will Poulter's arrows that he's just holding, I think. And there's an emotional scene where he says his goodbye to his only daughter. And turns out, what's it all for? Absolutely fucking nothing. A moment later, the unicorns come up to his lifeless body, calm all of a sudden because, you know, they can tell who's rich and evil and who's not. And then they put their horns together in some sort of ritual, which ends with Paul Rudd literally rising from the dead. Like Lazarus, he fucking rose. So it turns out the only somewhat genuine emotional beat in the film is negated entirely by magic and unicorns, I guess. I mean, the whole movie is about unicorns, but you know what I mean. Unfortunately, it only gets worse from here somehow, and there's only like 5 more minutes left in the movie, as we see the two protagonists taken in the back of a squad car for the presumed murder of the rich family, because the unicorns galloped away after like resurrecting Paul Rudd. And then as they're driving away, the 3 unicorns reappear in stride alongside the squad car before flipping it off the road, all while Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega hug and smile in the backseat. The fucking end. It leaves us wondering what we have learned from this whole ordeal. That Paul Rudd can't counteract bad writing, that rich people are bad and art history majors are good. Oh yeah, Jenna Ortega's art history major, by the way, and it's like kind of important in the movie, but like who really gives a fuck? That death is apparently a social construct. Hard to say which of these was the principal takeaway from Death of a Unicorn, but maybe on rewatch I'll extract all the value that I overlooked on this fateful first watch. If you guys like this video, please comment, subscribe, like, follow me on Letterboxd, you know, all that good shit, and I'll see you guys next time.